at EA3, and we're going to talk to Will Wright about Spore, which I got an opportunity to play just now, and I was really excited about getting a chance to play it because, you know, we've seen the creator so many times that I was more curious about how's the game coming together. So there's an awful lot of information in this game, and I think that I know one thing that you really want is it for be accessible as well to people, and one of the things I found immediately that I immediately latched onto was the timeline. The timeline really helped me get my head around what was happening in the game. Describe some about what the timeline represents and how it represents how it, you know, follows or maps the progression through the different stages.
Oh, Spore is kind of this epic journey, you know, and people can totally see the spatial side of that you're going from this tiny little drop of water up to this entire galaxy. We wanted a similar way to show the time component, the way that, you know, in fact, as you're going through the cellular and evolution phases, you're going through billions of years. When you get down to the tribal, you're down into thousands of years. From the civilization, you're down into, you know, years and decades. And also, the things that you're doing at every level are kind of changing your cultural personality. And that's what the timeline is representing is, you know, whether your species is becoming more aggressive, more social, more industrious. And these are the things that set your cultural personality. So in some sense, you're kind of programming the personality of your culture as you play each level.
How did you get to that point with tuning where you balanced, there's so much to dig into,
well,
but that it works?
You know, Spore is a very design-heavy game. You know, each of these is like a different genre. And I'm working with a big design team on this. You know, in the Civilization level in particular, we brought in Soren Johnson, who did the last Civ game. And, you know, he was the one that's really been, you know, shepherding the tuning and the design for the Civilization game. So I credit him with basically, you know, being able to present a game that has that many strategic possibilities, but not have it be overwhelming from a gameplay mechanic sense.
In the progress through the game, how do you guys determine what the trigger points are and when I move it from stage to stage, and how will that flow? What was the key to making that flow naturally?
Well, every level has a very definite goal state. You know, in the cell game, you're growing. In the creature level, you're gaining intelligence. Tribal level, you're kind of conquering or allying with neighboring tribes. So they kind of move from fairly individual accomplishments, you know, when you're driving as an avatar in the creature game, for instance, to more social accomplishments, like in the Civilization game, as you're, you know, interacting with other cities and purchasing or converting or attacking them. Once you get into space, the game just opens up into a lot of different metagames that you can choose to pursue. So that's where it really has almost the feeling of an MMO with a lot of different goal structures. But you know, at every level, we were basically kind of looking at, you know, homages to our favorite genres and what the natural goal structures would be within those genres.
So if I'm understanding right, then when I get to the final stage of a game, I might stay in that final stage just playing along almost infinitely?
Oh yeah, the space game is probably at least as large as all the other levels put together.
Oh dear.
Easily. With the number of things you can do, the number of goals you can pursue, and that's where the game really opens up. And in some sense, you can also just revisit, you know, some of the earlier levels. You can go down to civilizations and watch them battling it out and stuff. You can influence evolution on a planet, things like that.
And there's many games that do creators. Every MMO has that same sort of things. Sometimes they're fun. Sometimes they're, you know, more mechanical than they are fun. But playing with a creature creator is fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had some really sharp guys working on that for a long time. That was one of the things that we started very early on in the project. The creature creator has probably gone through maybe like 10 total rewrites, you know, and redesigns of, you know, what sort of parts would the players use, how do they attach them, how would they manipulate, you know, different, you know, limbs and things like that. And we put a lot of AI into the creature creator that's not visible. You don't think of something like that as having AI, but there's a lot of AI in that.
For instance, what does the AI in the creature creator do? I'm curious.
Well, to get technical, you know, whenever the hard part of any 3D modeling package is figuring out what the Z coordinate is.
Okay.
You know, you pretty much know what the X and Y is, but you don't know how deep the user intends to put that point in space. We're actually modeling a lot of invisible fields and forces that are guessing at what you think is probably, you know, what it thinks is probably the most likely place that the user intends that Z spot to be in the space. And so most people, when they do 3D editors, they approach it, you know, just very mechanically. Here's a tool, here's how we build the tool. But I think, you know, if you think about a tool as entertainment, you go about it a totally different way than a tool as a tool, you know. And so that's what we wanted every tool in Spore to be entertaining as a toy. So they want to be toys, you know, first and foremost. And by being a great toy, it automatically becomes a great tool. And then you get a lot of people using it, making lots and lots of stuff.
Right. And I think another big point that you hit on is there's going to be a lot of excitement over people knowing that what they're creating is being shared in other people's games. The Spore.
Oh, yeah.
So every time a game comes together, it's going to pull from the cloud and assemble from that database or
Yeah.
that you guys have on the server, all the different elements that are building into the game. The browser system, can you talk a little bit about how that's being managed on inside the game and how it will work with a player and what they can look forward to as far as how to customize their game and what it'll be pulling from?
Yeah, we put a lot of effort into giving players the ability to organize, control, subscribe to content, in the expectation that there would be a very large sea of content that players created. And I think that sea of content is going to be far larger than I expected even. So I think that we're going to see a really big payoff from the efforts that we put in. So players can subscribe to buddy lists of their favorite friends whose content will come into the game. They can build Sporecasts, which are like collections of content that are themed, put together, and subscribe to those. They can also tag content. And the most popular tags bubble up to the top level. When you start a new game, you can actually pick a theme, and it will try to pick content that has that tag to match the theme. And so there's several different ways you can control the content flowing into your game. So if you wanted your game to be a very cartoony experience, it'd be a very easy thing for you to set up that one game to be very cartoony with all the stuff around you. I could set up mine to be very realistic, hard sci-fi look, and our games look totally different.
So one of the things that really draws out everything to me is I get the sense that every game is going to be very, very different when people play it, and that's going to be even a week in, and then a month in, and 3 months in, with all this content that's being created by the community, it's going to just really, really take off.
Yeah.
From you guys playing it over the last few months, especially as it came together, what are some of the neat stories to get people excited about what they have to look forward to as their gameplay develops?
Well, there's so many dimensions to every level, it's kind of hard to describe it in that sense. I mean, there are things that I, as the designer, didn't know about until I saw in the game because, some of the other level designers added it here and there, and they're just, these laugh-out-loud moments. There was one thing where I found this race of cows. I was playing Tribe Game, and I domesticated them. You can go up and kind of feed them and make them your friends, and if you're friendly enough, and there's a little pen, they come and live in the pen. There was this one very particular large cow I had in my pen, and at some point there was a rival tribe that I accidentally started a little tiff with, killed one of their guys by accident, and so they came and attacked my tribe, and they had really good spears, and I had nothing, and all of a sudden my cow jumps out of the pen and attacks and just ravages their raiders, the cow that I domesticated. And it was like one of those laugh-out-loud moments because I didn't know that they'd put that in on the tribe team, and I just loved it, and it's saying things like that, it makes sense, and they become narrative elements, but still, the cow was designed by another person, the creatures I was playing was designed by somebody else, I chose to domesticate it, I accidentally started this battle, and then the cow had a mind of its own and did this. I mean, and it's the combination of these factors that leads up to just so many different possibilities,
Well, I'm really looking forward to playing it myself and getting to actually see what I can come up with thematically. Appreciate it. Thanks for talking to us.
Certainly.
Thanks, Will.